Today I'm going to be making something that's a bit of a twist on a very popular and highly indulgent dessert called Banoffee Pie. In case you've never heard of it, Banoffee Pie is a biscuit base with a kind of caramel made from condensed milk, a layer of bananas and then whipped cream on top. It's called Banoffee because that's a portmanteau, which is take a part of the word banana and a part of the word toffee and jam them together. Banoffee. But anyway, I don't have condensed milk today and I'm going to use this instead. I'm using cocoa jam, which is very similar to condensed milk, but it's made from coconuts. So I guess what I'm making today is Banoconut pie? So we're going to start off by making a biscuit base. The biscuit base is going to be made from digestive biscuits. Now, in case you don't know what a digestive biscuit is, it's one of these. And it's a oatmeal and wheat biscuit, or cracker. And they're quite popular in Britain. It's kind of the standard biscuit, really. So we want about 220 grams of these. Which turns out to be about half a packet. These, by the way, are not my favourite biscuit. One of my favourites is this one, custard cream. Well, at least partly, because look at the thing. It's wonderful, isn't it? So we're going to have to crush those biscuits in a minute, but while we're doing that, we might as well be melting some butter to mix in with them. So I want 100 grams of butter, which I think is probably a bit more than that. Yeah. That'll do. And I'm just going to melt that over a very gentle heat. And then we're just going to crush these biscuits up to fine crumbs. You could do this by putting them in a plastic bag and bashing them with something, but I find that's a bit of a waste of a bag, so I'm just going to put them in the bowl here and crush them with the end of a rolling pin. Someone will no doubt point out this is not a very healthy recipe because it's got loads of sugar in it, it's got loads of butter in it, it's got a whole jar of coconut jam in it, which is more sugar. Yeah, okay, just in case there was any doubt, this is not a health food recipe. This is not intended to be a healthy dessert. This is intended to be quite indulgent, and as a result we'll probably only have a little slice of it each. This will serve probably 8 people, and it's intended to be very sweet, very indulgent, very rich, and you'd maybe have this with a cup of coffee at the end of the meal. And you wouldn't eat this all day, every day. A little of what you fancy does you good. That's about as far as that needs to be crushed up. Just going to shake it, and any big pieces will come to the top. Good enough. Butter is now completely melted, and I haven't boiled this butter. I've just very gently warmed it to melt it, because we're going to want this to set in a minute anyway. So the idea is not to overheat this any more than necessary. I'm just going to give that a good mix. It will look at the first like it isn't enough butter to moisten the biscuit crumbs, but it is. Just need to make sure that's completely mixed in. Don't need to sweeten this at all. The biscuits are already quite sweet. You can add crushed nuts here if you want to. That would be an interesting and very pleasant addition. Right, all those biscuit crumbs are now soaked in butter, and so I'm just going to tip them into an 8-inch dish. Just kind of spread those out across the bottom there, and then I'm just going to use the base of a glass to press them around, but I'm allowing them to rise up at the edge here. So I don't know if you can see that. Let's get a close up of that to form a sort of a rim. And that's going to contain the rest of the filling. So just so you can see what I'm doing here, I'm pressing that glass in like that, and then I'm ramming the edge down behind it. And that will compact and consolidate it without actually crushing it down completely flat. So we'll still end up with a rim. So we've got the crust there, made from biscuits and butter, buttery biscuit base. That just needs to go in the fridge now for half an hour at least, and then we'll put the next layer in, which is going to be the toffee. So this cocoa jam, let's just have a look at that. Very, very similar to boiled condensed milk, but with a very, very pronounced coconut flavour, which is really nice. I sense that this is not going to come out of the jar all that easily, so I'm going to stand this jar upright and pour some warm water to surround it. See how we get on with that. Right, the base is nearly ready, so now we need to prepare the toffee, or rather coconut filling. So we want about 60 grams of butter, and then we've got this cocoa jam. So I've got to be careful here because the label's slippery, but I've had that in a bath of water to help it come out of the jar. I think it's a 370 gram jar, but I have had a little bit out of it. So this cocoa jam, really sticky stuff. I actually bought this because I thought it was going to come in a drinking glass. I bought a jar of this years and years ago, and it was packed in a drinking glass with a tin lid on the top, and it was a lovely drinking glass. I really loved it. Sadly, it got broken one day, and so I actually ordered another jar of this to try to replace that glass, but it looks like they've switched to a jar now. So we've got 60 grams of butter, 270 grams of the cocoa jam, and I'm just going to melt that together and then whisk it over a gentle heat. So I've melted the butter and the cocoa jam together over a gentle heat, and now I'm going to just bring it to the boil. I do need to boil it just to help it set a little bit. The cocoa jam was actually quite stiff on its own, so I don't think it'll need actually boiling like toffee would. Right, that's boiling nicely. I'm going to actually turn that off now, and we're going to let that cool and keep on whisking that until it stops bubbling, and then I'm going to let that cool. It really needs to be almost down to sort of blood heat before we try to pour it on the pie base. So I'm just going to keep whisking for as long as those bubbles are there. And now we're going to let that cool down. I think that'll probably take about 20 minutes probably to cool down to the point where we can pour it on the pie. I don't want to let it cool down completely or it will set in the pan, but we're going to at least cool it to the point where it doesn't just melt that base when we pour it on there. While this toffee stuff is still liquid enough to pour, I'm just going to tip it into the base there. And there's no real need to spread that out because it just kind of levels itself. Yeah, you can see that's still quite runny. Okay, that needs to go in the fridge, but critically it needs to be level because it will set as it cools. Okay, now I want 3 bananas, and these bananas are, for me, the peak of ripeness. I actually think that a banana is perfect in terms of flavour and aroma when it's just speckled like this. It looks like a pancake texture. It's kind of mostly yellow with spots of brown. Your mileage may vary on that. You might prefer your bananas to be less or perhaps more ripe than this, but this is definitely how I like them. This is when I find that they have the really sweet, strong banana aroma. Okay, and I'm just going to slice these bananas into, what's that? That's about 1/4 centimetre slices. Probably shouldn't have tried to do all 3 of them at once like that. Just making it more difficult for myself. Yeah, for me, a banana isn't a banana until it's got a little bit of brown on it, on the skin. And now this has been cooling in the fridge for an hour, and that toffee layer is now set. So that's perfect. And so I'm just going to layer on these bananas. And there's really not very much science to this, it's just going to be a case of trying to cover this toffee with an even layer of banana. It might actually be 2 even layers of banana. So that's ready to be topped now, and normally Banoffee pie will have just whipped cream on top and then some grated chocolate. I'm actually going to make like a cheesecake topping for mine. So I've got 200 grams of soft cheese. This is just a soft cheese spread. That's a serving suggestion. It hasn't actually got leaves in this. It's just a plain soft cheese, like Philadelphia cheese, but this is a off-brand one I got from Lidl. So 200 grams of that, plus I'm going to use 200 ml of double cream. So that's about 2/3 of this pot. This is a 300 ml pot. So about 2/3 of this pot, and I'm going to whip that to soft peaks. So just going to guess it. That's about 2/3 of the pot. So going to whip the cream first. Okay, that's good. That's as whipped as I need that to be. And you can see that's just holding together. And then this soft cheese, sometimes there's just a little bit of whey on top of that, so I'm just going to take that off. And the whole 200 gram pack of soft cheese is going to go in there. A little splash of vanilla extract, and about 2 tablespoons full of caster sugar. Now we could just fold that in, but I'm just going to whisk it slowly in instead. The whisk won't break the cream down. We're just going to whisk that ever so slowly together. That's all it takes. And just have a little taste. Nice. Okay, and then this cream cheese mixture is just going to go on top of the pie. For the moment I'm just going to wallop it in like that, and then we'll push it around once it's in the tin. So we'll just press it down like this, and then smooth it around to level it out. So that's now going to go in the fridge because that cream and cheese will firm up a bit more. So we're going to leave that in the fridge for a couple of hours, and then we should be ready to serve for dinner. It's actually the next day. I decided to leave this overnight for reasons. Basically, we had a different dessert to finish off from the previous day, and I thought I'd leave this overnight to set properly. So time to turn this out and see what we've actually ended up making here, see if it's any good. I'm just going to run a knife quickly around the edge. Let's get this out of the tin. And there it is. We can, if necessary, just wipe away any cream that's on the outside of the crust there. So just to finish that off, I've got a Galaxy Ripple, which is like a it's a bit like a Cadbury Flake. It's flaky sort of ribbons of chocolate that have been, well, I'll have a look at it in a minute. But anyway, I'm going to bash this up. It's been in the fridge to help it be a bit more brittle and crumbly. So we're just going to crumble this chocolate onto the top of the pie here. Did I mention that this is not a health food? So I'd appreciate if you don't give me a hard time about that in the comments. This is very much an indulgent dessert that I'm only going to eat a little slice of. And the idea of this is you make this for, there's enough there for 8 people easily. So there we go. Banoconut pie. So there it is, and I'm pretty happy with that. So all that remains now is to cut a wedge of this and give it a taste. Let's have a look at this inside. Here we go. Nice, look at that. So, buttery biscuit base, coconut caramel, bananas, and then the cheesecake topping on the top with just a little few flakes of crumbled chocolate. Time for a taste. That is really rich, really quite rich and decadent, but very delicious. And you can taste the coconut there in that coconut caramel, so that was worth doing. And the combination of coconut and banana is a good one. I think that cheesecake topping just makes it a little bit lighter than it would be if we just used whipped cream. So I'm really happy with that. I hope that was interesting for you. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.